Hello my lovelies! My name is Gilbert Dolthalion and the plan for today is to talk about understitching. Understitching is one of those techniques that, while isn't particularly tricky, isn't intuitive, so it often gets classed under moderate or advanced skill levels, even though it's not actually that difficult to do. It's used to keep facings or linings showing through to the front of your garment by stitching them to the seam allowance. Once pressed, this keeps it from rolling outwards and therefore becoming visible. It's particularly effective on curved seams such as neck holes or armholes. This technique doesn't involve any special equipment, but if you're feeling fancy, you can do it by hand to give it a bit of a decorative touch. Here's my seam. Let's imagine it's a face neckline on a top. I've sewn, clipped and pressed the seam, but not trimmed the seam allowance. It's now lying flat, but you can still see the edge of the lining here on the top. To fix that, we're going to open up the seam again and sew the seam allowance to the lining. This is top stitching, so you want to try and keep the line as smooth as possible, but it will only be seen on the inside of the garment, so there's less pressure than normal. You want to get your seam as close to the original seam as possible, within a few millimeters. Normally I would use a matching rather than a contrasting thread, so in this case a red thread, but I want to make it easier for you guys to see what I'm doing, so I'm using a white contrasting one this time. Once that's done, I like to press it again for good measure, and then you can see the difference between the half that is understitched and the side that isn't, where the lining is still rolling forward and visible. Once the understitching's done, you can then go ahead and finish your seam, although be wary of adding too much bulk, especially if it's somewhere extremely eye-catching like a neckline. For a lot of fabrics, the understitching itself can act as finishing, so you could just trim it down and leave it there. But if the fabric will unravel, this is the kind of place that fray check would be a good friend. Or if you want to stay with stitching, then a blanket or whip stitch would also work a lot of the time. If you want to do a decorative stitch by hand, it's still exactly the same technique. Use a running stitch to seam the seam allowance to the lining. You can use a contrast thread if you want and you're confident in your stitches. And that's it. As I said, a very simple technique, but one that makes a big difference. Remember that it can be used anytime that you've got a facing or a lining on your garment, as long as you can get to the seam, of course. The best advice I can give you for this technique is to have a go with your fabric before you sew it for real, because depending on the weight of your fabric, you'll want to sew closer or further away from your construction seam. If the fabric is thick, then sewing it too close can make it still show through on the outside. But if it's thin, you'll want to get it close as possible. I hope that helped you to go forth and make something with a beautiful understitched lining. Let me know if there's anything that you thought could have been explained or shown better, and also if there's anything you'd like me to cover. I want to make these as helpful as I can to people, so the more that I know that people like or dislike, the better I can make them. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please think about giving me a like and subscribing if you're not already for more sewing and costume relating content. Stay safe everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!